So, before diving into the specifics of what we're about to look at on screen, I want to cover a few fundamental things about this composition, just so we're all starting off at the same base level. So, number one, is this anyone can answer, or ideally anyone from the starting roster can answer? Is this a composition you guys feel confident playing? Is this a composition that feels comfortable for you as a team, that you feel confident running, say if we had a tournament tomorrow?
It's like niche on maps, in my opinion.
Okay.
It depends on a map. Like
I
for
think what he was asking is like you as a team, like if you needed to play it, would you be comfortable?
Yeah, we're map 5, Overwatch League Grand Finals. We're going into Lijiang Garden. Are we rolling out on this map?
Yeah.
A most impressive
I'm comfortable
display.
with playing, but not with our understanding.
Okay, awesome. Good to
Yeah,
know.
I'm not that comfortable in my role as Reaper usually, but this one I was on Sombra. I switched
Yeah.
after this map.
I noticed a bit of swapping with you guys. So your go-to is the Reaper then, and Cloud is normally on the Sombra?
Yeah, Cloud isn't starting, but
Okay, gotcha.
he's a ringer.
Understood. I did say I do have quite a few notes for your Sombra, but I'll gloss over those then.
Okay.
No worries. So second question. So we feel somewhat confident on this composition. Obviously, we need to deepen our understanding of it. If anyone could give me one crucial point for what we need to work on, what we feel is the weakest point of our playstyle on this composition, what would it be? If anyone has an answer for that.
I
A
think our
most
mid
impressive
fights
display.
are definitely weak for target focusing.
All right, target focus in the big fight. Anyone else?
I think it's comms in general.
Okay. And comms relating to target focus, obviously, but anything else in terms of comms for specifics?
Our tempo.
Okay, so like deciding when we want to go aggressive, when we need to be defensive, that kind of thing?
Well, a lot of times we'll like split. because
That's
half our
more
team's in the
time. That's
tempo.
more timing and commitment to it, not necessarily our rotations and engages.
You have the
Okay.
you have the VOD paused right now. I'm not crazy, right?
Yeah, it's paused, sorry.
Yes, talk.
Okay, I'm just making sure. I'm like, wait, I'm not.
Yeah. Just going over
Like,
some
I-
fundamental stuff at first.
Okay.
Like I'm confident with my rotations. I'm confident with my engage timings. It's just I feel commitment's a big problem.
Okay.
Like my deaths, if you look at statistically, are like doubled to what I would normally have.
Gotcha. All right.
I don't know if it's by my own mistake. Some of them are obviously, but you know.
Unfortunately, I did pick a VOD without you actually in it, ALW, but I think
Yeah,
obviously
later.
a lot of this stuff will be
Yeah, I was in
Universal.
class to like halfway through that, so halfway through I swapped back in.
Gotcha. Okay. So let's get into a few fundamentals of tempo specifically, and then how that's going to play into communication. But again, before we look at gameplay, so again, VOD's paused just to lay out a few basics here. When we are looking to play this composition, the biggest thing in my eyes that's important that we grasp as a team, as all 6 members in the game, is that we are not playing according to a script. This is not a quote-unquote like solved composition like Rhine Brawl. This is not a simple thing to do where it's like, okay, if our Maywall finds value, we can commit. It's a lot closer in my eyes to something like Goats, which again is more of a solved composition than this, but it's a much more flexible playstyle and it's a lot less instant win than it looks like on paper. Obviously, this is the fastest composition in the game. This is one of the most lethal compositions in the game. Kills happen crazy fast. Because of that, especially in the mirror, tempo swings extremely fast. So when we find advantages and when we are willing to commit to things, it's important that we as 6 members in the game understand at an individual level, we don't have the highest expectations possible. It's not as simple as EMP Death Blossom in kill 6 people every single fight. If it was, we wouldn't need to be running Vaudery right now. It's a lot of soft punishes and snowballing off of small engages. And first fights is probably the best example of this that we're ever going to see. All right, so first fight here. I mean, obviously we know neutral here. Again, just to run crash course through neutral here, our highest priority is going to be forcing resources from the enemy Winston, making sure that we find, again, the small advantages that we can snowball big advantages. There's a few things that are obvious gains for us. Reaper damage, Sombra hacks, big eats, big boops. So if we full matrix like a clip from Reaper and our Reaper is uncontested from the enemy D.Va, if we find a hack on the enemy D.Va which makes that free, if their Reaper is still in spawn because they decide to sim TP for no reason, if we find a boop on high priority damage dealers like Reaper, sometimes even like Winston or D.Va, these are small advantages that can create bigger advantages. What this typically looks like in game is we're going to force their Winston bubble first, we're going to force their full matrix, we're going to force their amp first, and maybe even an amp heal if we're lucky, or we're going to force them to back off. If any one of those things happens, I'm sure you guys know, that doesn't mean we've won the fight. and this is the point I'm trying to get into. It doesn't mean that we can act like we can spend all of our resources to then close the fight, because we're nowhere near ending the fight. This is why I like drawing the comparison to goats. What it means is we can choose more aggressive options for our resources. It means we can skip the steps of needing to worry about using our resources defensively and start prioritizing using them to find more aggressive value. This is going to lead into two main priorities when we're in these situations. Layering our resources instead of stacking them. So instead of, for example, if we force their monkey bubble and they back off, it doesn't mean we jump, we bubble, we amp speed, we Reaper TP, we Sombra translocate, like just as an over-exaggeration. It means we do one thing, likely amp speed is our first resource, and then maybe we commit bubble if we force Reaper Wraith. I'm using this as an example because it's literally what we're about to see. And then maybe if we kill someone, then we can jump deeper, then we can look for a deeper hack, then we can speed or use damage orb for our next cooldown and something like that, and try and get a little bit more. We need to push these advantage states as far as they can go without sacrificing the ability to stabilize if the worst happens. As I'm sure you guys know, there's so much bullshit in this game that can stop us from doing exactly what we want. So the most important thing we can do is adopt the mindset that we're not always going to be able to do what we want to do. We're going to need to do what we have to do to put ourselves in the best situation possible, so in simple terms, our Reaper can pop off. If we can get through all the bullshit, survive all the DM, the bubbles, the amps, the coalescence, the EMPs, and get to the end of a fight where Reaper is just shooting people, then we've won the fight. On paper. Obviously, Reaper can miss his shots, or they could hit more damage from their Reaper, or anything could happen in those moments, of course, but it's going to be a lot more likely and a lot more consistent for us to come out ahead in those situations once we've gotten past the initial rotation, I'll call it. The rotation of resources, rotation of ultimates, whatever it is. So again, this first fight, I think, is a great example of that. We find huge value from two big Sombra hacks, and we get a lot more damage with our Reaper. Actually, that's a lie. Their Reaper actually ends up doing more damage throughout the course of this fight, but we get more meaningful damage with our Reaper because we're able to chunk down this Winston once he gets hacked here for the second, or after the D.Va gets hacked. This forces it, again, this doesn't mean we win the fight. What this does is it forces defensive resources. It forces almost, or a lot of Moira's healing juice, and it forces almost all of D.Va's Matrix. Because of that, because of their desync also from their Reaper's aggression during this moment, this forces Reaper to Wraith. This forces Lucio off the map so he's not able to counter boop our Reaper. This forces the backwards positioning, and that's what allows us to put down a bubble and get even more value. Now, off this bubble, again, this still doesn't mean we've won the fight, but it puts us at a strong positional advantage, at least at this point, that if they want to recontest here, they're going to take a lot of damage for it. And that's exactly what the enemy Winston does. He's not respecting the fact that he just spent his entire Matrix just surviving a hack, and he gets popped. So this is exactly how we take neutral fights. This gets...
So basically what you're... Oh,
Go ahead, sorry.
So basically what you're saying is that, in the, like, at least in the mirror, you're just trying to like put yourself in a position where they have to push through you. Basically, is what you're saying.
Yeah. So there's lots of different types of advantages. That's how we would leverage positional advantage. If they're forced to push through us, and the simplest way to look at that is if we control the point and they have to come to point, obviously that's an advantage in our favor. That forces the movement onto their hands. But we can do that positionally if we force them back and if we force their resources to be used defensively. Generally speaking, in Overwatch, in any composition, you use resources to get aggressive and to take space, and when you don't have resources, you're forced to give up that space. So when they fail to get value from their resources because our Sombra got a hack, then they're forced to use resources like bubble and positioning to give up that space and give us positional advantage. This doesn't mean we've won. It means they have to spend more cash to get less value. And the more we force them to spend, eventually they're going to go broke. Once they go broke, our Reaper kills everybody. Make sense? So yeah, really clean first fight. That's textbook. And again, like, it's not flashy. It's not an instant rush. Obviously, you guys know this. The mirror is a very slow first fight very often. And it's very, like, minimal advantages that ends up forcing those kind of things. It's not usually even as big as something like a Sombra hack, so good job even finding that. But being able to capitalize on those and snowball them is exactly how we win neutral. All right. First thing, and again, I know you're not a Sombra player. I never, ever want to see a Translocator EMP with this composition. Do you know why that is?
I mean, I can't really get out very easily.
That's one thing, yes. More importantly than that, it's giving them, like...
Every single person on the team also has movement abilities, and it's a clear 3-2-1 on an
Yeah. look at the amount of
It's
time they
basically
have to react to
screaming.
this EMP. So like when EMP
Yeah.
happens, it's instant. It's the same as like Transcendence. It's instant value, right? It's the same as like Shatter or arguably like Pulse Bomb or big ultimates like that just find instant pop off value. If they have like a second and a half to watch this purple bullshit flying across the screen into their team, that's 2 seconds of time that they're already reacting to EMP before they even get hacked. And you know how much easier it is to react to EMP when you're not hacked, obviously. They can use their cooldowns. They can use things like bubble, fade to get out of it, speed boost, whatever it is. So the fact that they're reacting to EMP before they're even hacked means this is doomed from the start. And again, I'm not going to harp on you too much, Snow. I know you're not the Sombra player, but I will say, like, almost every single EMP I saw from this map, we were tossing Translocator in because we weren't setting up properly. All it takes is like an extra 5 seconds to go into stealth, find a good positioning. And again, lots of bullshit can happen that forces you out of position. So call off the play. Don't force a losing play. What happens here is we overextend. We only get 2 people. Decently high priority members, but we're not getting the Lucio, obviously. We're not getting the D.Va. Those are arguably the highest priority in this moment. And because of how far we went for it, on top of it being a slow EMP, our follow-up is equally slow. Look at where our Reaper is during this fight. Oh, my VOD just skipped all over the place, sorry.
Also, wouldn't this be considered greedy as well because of the fact that you're using your mobility cooldowns to go in and 6-man mirror?
I think if we guarantee value
fine.
from those cooldowns, it's fine. But
Well, yeah, but
Are-
like,
yeah.
like in this rotation, yeah, specifically.
Because we're pushing a tempo and pushing ult
Yeah.
advantage, if you can use that, it covers up for the lack of or the need to use cooldowns.
Well, of course,
Yeah,
but
for
like
sure.
this is like a particular. This is a greedy.
Yeah.
Because like you don't necessarily know you're gonna catch like.
I mean, it's
Like,
better
you,
to
like, as a
commit than not
Winston-
commit. With just if you just throw EMP in there and don't commit, then that's just.
Well, yeah, but I'm
Yeah.
just saying you shouldn't throw EMP in there like anyways, right?
yeah,
You should
one,
just
we shouldn't
use
shouldn't
EMP to
ever
the block.
translocate EMP. Number one. Number two, if we are going for this up, so here, let me go back. I did some drawings. So there's 3 types of EMPs we typically look for in the mirror. And honestly, just in general with this composition, number one, so in the red here, we look to hammer and anvil them. Have you ever heard that term before? Basically, we look to sandwich them. So if we're EMPing them this deep, like say they're looking to cross bridge, or even they're just in the courtyard in general, we need people to able to contest the space behind them, the space, in other words, where they would want to kite to, whether that's from a Reaper TP or a Winston jump, to make sure that they are taking damage and being consistently threatened no matter what they do. So even if they're able to kite, there's still something that's slowing them down, and this is usually going to be the Winston, just because that's the hardest roadblock for them to get through. And even if our Winston dies for going that aggressively, we should have an overwhelming presence that's too much for them to deal with. And that's going to be the theme of our EMP plays. It's too much for them to deal with. Number 2, in blue here, the idea here is if they pass a choke point...
Can't see.
Oh, you can't see the drawing? Does it only show when I'm like... Okay, wait. If I redraw, can you see... Sorry. If I draw like this, can you see that?
Yeah, I saw that. We see that.
All right. So number 1, say we're EMPing here, hammer and anvil. We're pushing with our core across the bridge here, and our Winston is able to cut off their kite route, or if he's jumping here in the same way. This is obviously very risky for the Winston, but if we're willing to commit to this level of aggression, we need to be willing to put our lives on the line. So yeah, hammer and anvil setup, classic dive. Number 2, if they're coming through white room here, for example, or arguably if they're coming across bridge here as well, they have to cross a choke point to get on point. And again, because we own the point, because the onus is on them to touch the point, they're likely going to force resources like an early coalescence, like speed boost, like jumps potentially, like matrix, just to get positional neutral. Once we force them into this position, then we hit them with a big EMP, and it's not that it's unkiteable, and it's not that we're able to get behind them, but it's that kiting becomes so much more difficult because they've already committed to a position. This is standard stuff. You see this all the time in Brawl. You think about how you use Maywalls in Brawl. This is fairly standard stuff, fairly basic stuff. This is very often the least common type of EMP because it's the most predictable. This is what they're expecting you to do. So it's not that we can't rely on it, it's that we want to mix up our potential as often as we can so that we're not only doing that type of EMP. And then third, if we are going for an EMP like this, we need to make sure that the timing is critical. When we are going in, the moment the EMP comes through, we're already doing damage. So the way we set this up, ideally, we do things like, I don't like recommending this to all teams, but I have found success in teams in the past with doing something like a Reaper TP in their face and then EMPing directly on top of the Reaper. This causes a reaction to the Reaper where they think they can find value and they start reacting with intention to punish, and then they get shit on. And then on top of that, the Reaper's immediately available to do damage, assuming Winston and D.Va are able to follow up that TP play, and assuming the EMP finds value, of course, then Reaper should actually be under no danger, sorry. But the important thing here is the timing of the EMP. The moment EMP comes out, the moment our Sombra's pressing Q, we're already having a target in mind, we're already having a kill box in mind, and we're already starting to do damage. Like, EMP, on paper, perfect EMP would be the moment the Winston lands after his jump. Make sense? This is obviously made easier if we're pairing it with other ultimates. Like if we're EMP D.Va bombing, like the timing needs to be tight on that. Like the EMP comes out right as the bomb's about to explode to catch them off guard. If we're EMP coaling, we're not going to coal for 2 seconds and then EMP, or we're not going to EMP and then 2 seconds later coalescence. We're going to combine those things so it's an overwhelming force that even if they do react to it, they're still going to die.
You simply won't have the resources to react to it.
Exactly. And this isn't a composition with like Trance and Baptiste Lamp or anything like that. Like they don't have a lot other than beat or in their personal cooldowns, and a lot of that gets mitigated by the EMP itself. So, not to say this was a bad EMP, and I like the fight plan around this EMP a lot actually. Like going aggressive like this to catch them off guard, especially when they've gone equally EMP. I'm not sure if we knew this in the moment, obviously, but when we're going aggressive like this, it's mainly to catch them off guard. But EMP itself isn't what catches them off guard. It's the follow-up damage that happens almost instantaneously after the EMP. So when it comes to communication around a moment like this, we need to know what type of EMP we're going for, and that mainly comes down to where we're trying to EMP. If we're EMPing like in their face pre-rotation, or even like before they're expecting it, we need to know that we need to go as fast as possible. If we're waiting for a specific moment for them to hit vulnerable space and we can like get behind them, and our Winston has a set play or our Reaper has a set TP, then we can set up for those specific moments. Otherwise, we have to wait for the default of them passing a choke and being in default exposed location. Once they're past this line, they're just default exposed. They don't have speed boost to get back. I mean, maybe they do actually. Lucia's probably hiding, obviously. But they're already overexposed that even if they kite, we can continue the aggression. So that's our default. But if we're pushing past that, which I think you should absolutely have the confidence to do that, but make sure you're doing it right. It all starts with communication, but before communication, actually, just that deep understanding of what we're trying to accomplish as individuals to make this play work.
In the neutral, who's
Yep.
the EMP target? Like, I know if they have an ult, you want to go for them first. But like, if we just get a free kill from EMP, who should we look for?
Like if we
I think
find like a solo
Winston,
EMP,
honestly.
the
No, like
easiest.
if we EMP 6,
Who do
Who's
we
like
go
the
for?
priority target?
yeah.
Yeah,
Winston and Moira, I'd say.
'Cause I always think
yeah, I
of-
would say Moira, and Reaper, if you can. Ultimately, the best character to target focus is the character that's going to die first, and that's often Winston just because of positionally. But if you are able to do things like if they are 6-man rotating, for example, and you're able to hammer and anvil set up them, then yeah, you can have your Winston going on the Moira and the Reaper, and even if they're not being targeted by the rest of the team, that's still forcing them basically completely out of the fight, and that makes killing the Winston a lot easier. So individual target focus at that level can make sense. Ultimately,
Yeah, I
though, yeah,
understand
like just screaming a target focus, whoever's the most exposed, ideally squishies if you can, but Winston is most often the most exposed. But yeah, the other thing here is we obviously didn't account for the enemy EMP when we were going this aggressive. If we were, we might not have called this level of aggression. We might have waited for them to hit the rotation towards White Room and hit them there. Again, a fairly exposed location, free fight rotation. We can catch them off guard there. But we weren't ready for the enemy EMP. 2 of us went down. So, mid-fight here. Another thing about this composition, again, I said it gets really complicated once we start throwing ultimates around. It's really hard to gauge when we're at advantage or versus disadvantage. Using mid-fight ultimates, I think you need to have individual confidence on. With that said, if we use mid-fight ultimates like Primal, like Bomb, like Coalescence, like arguably Beat, if we find a reason to beat mid-fight for some reason, anything like that, we need some level of coordination. The only exception I would say is Reaper. Reaper can do a lot individually. It's almost like a Rhine Shatter, where if you see a moment, it's a very split-second decision, and you don't have time to wait for anyone else to coordinate with you. But if we're using both Primal and Bomb, this is very much something we coordinate, where we actively go on a target, where we're bombing to a specific location, and then we're using Primal to boop someone into the bomb. If we find a single kill with this Bomb Primal, that's worth those 2 ultimates. Yeah. So, anytime we're in the mid-fight, don't be afraid to throw ults around. I think the exception being like don't just EMP for no reason. Obviously, those are some ultimates that require some setup. Don't just blossom for no reason. There's a lot you need to keep track of.
Don't just beat into an EMP.
Yeah,
like,
exactly. don't just feed. Yeah, exactly. don't just feed. But most of these ultimates, if not all of them, to be honest, can be used mid-fight with a lot of success, but that doesn't mean we can just throw them around. There's plenty of situations where you will just throw them around, like primaling and diva bombing just to survive, coalescing just to survive, or because someone's low and you need to keep up tempo, things like that. Like I said, Blossom, but because Reaper saw an opportunity. These are fine individual decisions to make. But whenever we can, what's going to win out most mid-fights is, again, similar to what's winning our EMP, an overwhelming amount of force that they're not ready to deal with. And it's a lot easier to deal with just a diva bomb or just a primaling monkey, especially as individuals. But when all of a sudden you throw both into the mix and people start panicking, people start making more individual-based decisions, people start splitting from the enemy team, and people get punished. So more than anything, this is a communication issue. This is just, one, when we're in the mid-fight, we need reasons to turn the fight. It's not just, it's winnable, keep playing. Because this comp doesn't just play. This comp coordinates. This comp six-mans whenever possible, right? So finding those excuses to go together, ultimates being one of your best excuses, need to be capitalized on quickly. And it's so easy for me to say all this stuff to you guys. It's so much harder for you to actualize this in-game. So I'm not expecting you guys to turn around next scrim and be like, oh man, we're gods of the mid-fight now. Every bomb is finding 6 kills because we're primaling with it or something like that. What it means is you need to be more open about communicating these ultimates, these key resources in these critical moments, so that you give yourself the best advantage. It's not about instantly winning the fight. It's about putting yourselves back at advantage. That's sort of the definition of a tempo ultimate. When we're not afraid to use ultimates just as tools to kill everybody like EMP Death Blossom, and we're using them for tempo, for either rebalancing the neutral, so we're getting out of disadvantage, or we're putting ourselves at an advantage, we're not going to be able to do that consistently unless we know what expected value we're trying to get from these ultimates, and we're trying to coordinate that value together. All right, let's keep going. Even little things like that, like getting back and peeling for that Reaper, it doesn't kill the Reaper. And arguably, like a bad jump from Infected, just to go into point, again, like touching point in this comp doesn't really matter unless it's a 99-99 kind of thing. But like going back for that Reaper to deny value from the Reaper, it's not a kill, but it's one step closer to resetting neutral. And that's what we're fighting for. Again, the only quote-unquote carry in this composition are going to be EMPs and just Reaper as a character. And the more we can get back to neutral or get into advantage states, the easier those things are going to be to, one, farm EMP and get mid-fight hacks, obviously, and just let Reaper free fire with no fear. And once we reach that point, we don't need to communicate. Once Reaper's killing everybody, there's no need to coordinate. But getting to that step is the hard part. So yeah, just resetting now after that last fight.
Alright, have our Reaper flank left with Death Blossom, then we all just walk main, okay? Or Summer can flank with them too. We all need to look to just fuck Diva here, okay?
Monkey's back.
You really have nothing, just literally in with fucking Death Blossom.
I have full heal. Can we go?
Alright, you guys ready? Can you go for it? 3, 2, 1, walking speed.
So a couple things about this engage. Actually, let's let it play through a bit more.
Nice.
Carry me. Monkey. Yes, Primal. Suck on me.
All right.
I'm leaving.
Huge advantage state. We got the Diva mech out, right? That doesn't mean, again, that we've won the fight. Even though our Lucio's down here, I think we're still at a decent advantage state because, again, if our goal is to make Reaper as free as possible, there's no better tool than having Diva out of the fight. So our Reaper is that much closer to the end game, that much closer to just carrying this fight. The problem here is we committed resources without being, one, conscious of the primal. So I think we could have done one of two things, either committed and flipped, so getting all 6 members over here and then trying to flip onto this side of Dojo rather than trying to stay on our side, or looking to switch targets onto the monkey once we got the Diva, either even just hacked and not even gotten her demeched, and just tried to focus fire the monkey so his primal found no value. Not a huge problem, but wanted to point out that hacking Diva pre-fight is an extremely strong tool, and Diva being demeched obviously is just perma-hacked basically, but it doesn't mean that Diva needs to be the target. Very often hacking on Diva means going onto the Winston is the right call here, even during primal, I would say. But overall this is fine. Heavy focus on stabilization here. I think our communication could be stronger. I'm not sure where our Moira is. Again, we're getting like a little bit split in this mid-fight just because we're unable to stack our resources in the mid-fight. If we had been clearer about our pathing, been clear about things like where we're stabilizing, having strict callouts, like if you call it Dojo, if you call it our bridge, if you call it pillar, whatever you want to stabilize on, making sure that we're doing that as 6 people, and making sure that as individuals we're prioritizing that macro thinking, that thinking of stabilization before we're thinking about our individual value. This is obviously true of our DPS, but even of our support line as well. All right, so here. So far, I've heard no communication about the enemy Sombra's EMP, and obviously at this point, we need to know it's available. It's been available since first fight, and we need to know when these ultimates are coming out. EMP, by far, is the most important ultimate in this matchup, hands down, and I'm sure you guys know this. If we are not countering enemy EMPs when we have beat, and we are about to, but we weren't talking about it, so I'm going to act like we weren't about to. Very possible that Deco gets hacked here if he wasn't already heads-up positioning because of it. But we need to be doing more to counter enemy EMPs. We need to be communicating it so not 6 people or 5 people in this case get hacked. If our Reaper stabilizes, if our Moira stabilizes during this, that's all of a sudden a reason to not just stabilize the EMP, but a reason to go aggressive because they messed up their EMP. Their follow-up is just as bad as ours. Look how slow they are to follow up this EMP. Look where their backline is. They're not doing shit during this whole EMP, and they don't kill anyone because of it. Maybe, I mean, you could argue they were just trying to force beat out, but I think that's a garbage use of EMP if that's true. Either way, this was more on them messing up their EMP in the same way we messed up ours than it was a good outplay from us. So, 3 things. I want to see more spy checking from our D.Va and from our Moira. There's really no reason not to, essentially, especially when we're just setting up and we don't have a fight plan yet. And we want our Sombra, if we know they have a more EMP potential. So in this case, we're at disadvantage positionally. They have more free reign over the map. Their Sombra could be literally anywhere. Unless we force her out, I don't think it's always the call to set our Sombra up aggressively. Sometimes it is. If we know they don't have EMP, if we know we have an advantage somewhere, we can do things like go on flanks like we have been. Finding flank angles, finding hacks on D.Va. You've been finding a ton of pre-fight hacks that are finding really strong value. If we do that consistently, the enemy Sombra has nothing to fear. Literally just sitting with the team, holding right click is a really good counter to Sombra, unironically. It's very, very hard to deal with, but more than anything, we just need to be thinking about it as a team. There's no reason not to track EMP. There's no reason not to track every ultimate in the game, but EMP especially in this matchup is so critical, and it's the one ultimate that you don't expect in the mid-fight to be prioritized. They're going to prioritize it to be the first ultimate to close fights, or they're going to prioritize it once we've used everything we have to close out the fight. It's not a tempo ultimate. It's a fight ender, so be ready for it. But yeah, like I said, really nice stabilization. Unfortunately, the Blossom gets our Reaper, but even after all of that, like, that was a really good trade from us. We could have come out ahead there if we had been more willing to commit faster Cole. Maybe Deco if he didn't go so aggressive and didn't get caught up by our Cole, or if our Sombra was more passive and able to counter hack during their engage and actually lead to someone being punishable. All right, love the comms infected.
Some balls.
Again,
Infected.
super telegraphed EMP. And again, it's not that the EMP is bad. Like, EMPing both tanks, that's not actually that bad, because we can focus Monkey down really aggressively, even through beat, potentially, especially if we get a rehack during all of this, which should be relatively easy when they don't have Monkey Bubble. Not free, obviously, but relatively easy. But because they're reacting to the Translocator, how free is it to just dodge that? Not just the Lucio, but the Moira as well. What actually saves this play
The Reaper
is this,
also left
yeah,
as well.
exactly, and he's just going to be free firing if he's not deciding to just feed and get forced out to Wraith here. What actually saves this play is the fact that this bubble denies beat to both their tanks. That was an insane bubble, but still, even though this was sick, this is like a one-man follow-up to our EMP. Look how far behind we are. And not only that, we got hacked from behind during our play by the enemy Sombra, which, critical as a personal note individually, I want you to, if it's becoming a consistent problem that you're not able to cancel hacks from enemy Sombra, literally like bass boost the hell out of your headphones until you can hear the little beeping from her fingertips and always have a consistent reaction to the sound cue. You're not like D.Va, you're not going to be spinning around the map 24/7 trying to spy check or anything like that, but you need to be able to react with your auto aim. And especially while you're coalescing, there were a couple other instances from this VOD I noticed your coalescence got canceled during hack. So work on that, work on the sound cue. But yeah, this bubble was huge. Their beat find's not enough, our primal's good, and then we're able to use a tempo ultimate, our coalescence in the mid-fight, to actually be a closing resource. Alright, notably here, what is your guys' sort of language for engaging versus pressuring or posturing in a sense? So I heard the word walk, which is usually a really key word for a lot of teams. Do not hard engage. but to up the pressure so that you force them to make a decision. Is that consistent with your guys' thinking for the language?
No.
All right. When I hear
consistent terms.
All right, gotcha. So there's a lot of nuance to taking fights, right? Obviously. There's a lot of nuance to even taking a winning situation and deciding whether to int into it and hard engage and kill everybody, which I think would be the play if we were at 99% here, for example, versus calling to walk here from infected, which in my opinion, signals that we should take our time going into this fight and most importantly, save our resources. Even things like Diva Booster and Matrix and Bubble and Jump from Winston, but most importantly, obviously like Fade, Speed, Amp, and the other Fade. Sorry, Wraith is the one, not Fade. But both are Fades and are amping up from Lucio to make sure that we have those in case the worst happens. Worst happens being we use our cooldowns to push all these people. Sombra was suddenly here with another EMP, I don't know, or they were here with a Death Blossom and our Diva's committed and nowhere nearby to Matrix, or their Monkey is primal and he boops 5 people off the map and we don't have boosters to save ourselves. Things like that. That's small, avoidable individual outplays, which aren't going to happen right now, I don't think, but are easily avoidable by just slowing down our tempo a little bit. The other thing is here, I think I would have loved to see us like split our aggression here. Again, like Hammer and Anvil. We're not EMPing, but we know we have a numbers advantage here, which is a big enough advantage, similar to the enemy team being entirely hacked, that we should be able to form a better engage here. Even if it's just our Monkey, sorry, I don't know what letter I was drawing there, our Winston over here, and then our Diva Reaper pushing this way, and then obviously Lucio kind of doing Lucio things, Moira staying available to stabilize wherever, probably outside of point here, and then trying to get aggressive as soon as we can. Maybe Sombra just playing with the tanks, just doing damage kind of thing. Not a lot is needed to close out this fight. We just need to make sure we do it properly and cleanly. So again, I would highly recommend, if you guys don't already have set language for situations like this, differentiating between like push. I mean, a lot of teams literally just use the word int when you want to just int and go hard aggressive. That's fine. That's very clear. But also situations where you're trying to disengage, walk back, int, or you probably wouldn't say int back, but the word kite is usually universally understood as use your cooldowns to survive. Versus if we're walking back and you're still like stabilizing here and you're thinking like walk back doesn't mean give up space at all of a sudden you're overexposed as like a Reaper or a Moira, and then you're forced to fade or Wraith backwards, and those are wasted cooldowns we can avoid. Again,
yeah, I said chill a lot.
Chill, exactly, yeah.
Or like
walk,
stack point or chill.
Yeah, I would recommend like chill, perfect wording. Walk, again, similar. It's like low intensity engage. And the key difference between all of those is, one, the tempo, like the speed at which we're doing it, but also the amount of resources we're committing to it. This is going to let us go deeper. If the enemy team starts flying away, we can now have jump and boosters to chase them. We have amp speed to chase them. But also, again, if the worst happens, the more important scenario, if they come back with something unexpected, we have tools to react to it. That's what's important here. But yeah. Yeah, no hard push, and we call it off. And we have the resources to call it off because I think we sped out. And then even just from that small situation, from that small exchange, we force a primal that does absolutely nothing for them. Again, another mid-fight bomb that kind of was unclear on intention. If we were looking to stabilize off the primal, I'm going to say like bombing to stabilize. If we're looking to punish someone with the bomb, like push back with bomb, re-engage with bomb, whatever you want to say. Again, language is up to you guys. I'm not going to be with you guys every scrim block, so how you talk to each other is completely on your shoulders. But understand what each other are saying is what's important, right? It's not enough to just say diva bombing. We need to know what the purpose of this diva bomb is, what the purpose of what we're expected to do during the diva bomb. If there's a target, we should absolutely be calling the target focus during the diva bomb, things like that. And again, this isn't just Dylan, this isn't just a diva thing. I've seen this from every single one of your ultimates in the mid-fight. We need to know what we're doing as a team. Otherwise, we're not going to have the sort of critical mass of resources to actually turn things when we need them to turn. And again, like ultimately, like that bomb wasn't bad. It slowed them down. It was a perfect stabilization bomb. And again, you know what we do in the late fight? We let our Reaper kill everybody, and that's exactly what we're able to do here. And yeah, this was like all off the back, off that first fight that we won, and then that slow engage, and we stabilized after their primal, and then our bomb helped us stabilize even further because they were primaling, and then we farm them. Alright, again, we got an EMP play. Again, we not only thinking about EMP, thinking about what everyone's engaged looks like. This is not a Sombra play. And this is not just this kind of play. It's not A to B. We give ourselves the best advantage possible. Again, the individuals I'd want to highlight here are going to be our Reaper and our Monkey. If we're looking to hit them like this and pin them, sandwich them, hammer and anvil, whatever you want to call it, make sure we're setting that up. If we're focused on specific targets for our Reaper, if we're focused on backline, if we're focused on a really deep EMP, we should almost be premeditating our teleport from the Reaper. Again, I want you to watch our Reaper positioning during this. Cloud, if you're here, I'm not trying to call you out on this. Obviously, again, you're not a starter, so it's unfortunate we don't have our full starters here to talk about hero specifics and stuff like that. But of course, it transfers across everyone. Don't be afraid to get over-aggressive when we're making an over-aggressive play. That's the whole point of this EMP, is to do something unexpected.
Okay, okay.
We need to go now. They're probably gonna have
You
it.
can go, keep going, go.
Huge EMP.
Reaper hacked again?
But where's the follow-up?
Sombra's EMP, Sombra's EMP.
We're split.
Then all of a sudden, they balance it out. They come back. Thankfully, we individually outplay them. And more than anything, this only works because we're at 99 and we force them to touch one by one. They EMP back. A huge beat from Deco. Stabilizes even more.
Reaper on me, any careful.
I don't actually remember if we win this round, to be honest. It seems very up in the air still.
I'm coming back with Boston.
He was bombing.
He's at the car.
Can we live? Can we live on point?
I can't. I can live with
But yeah, very, very close.
Um,
And we're touching... Do we cap? I don't think we win this.
Look at Diva, we get the
It's looking bleak, boys.
I died instantly.
But yeah, again, when we're looking for these EMPs, this is like the simple win condition, right? This is the simple fight. If we can't get the simple fight right, we need to look back at our basics. And that's literally just when we're engaging, how is everyone using their individual resources? How is everyone playing to the win condition, right? How is our Monkey helping? How is our Diva helping? I mean, the Sombra's doing the EMP, obviously, but how can we do the EMP better? Maybe we don't throw the translocator, maybe we're in a position. Maybe from that position we get better scouting information. Maybe that dictates whether our Monkey jumps here, or whatever, or things like that. This changes our individual play, but everyone is focused on the macro. That's what's important here. So, now we're looking at a different matchup, and this is why the main reason I wanted to look at this VOD is so we can look at the mirror. Obviously, there's a lot to work on in the mirror still, but now we shift mindset entirely because we're playing up against a new composition. So, in a word, what should change, or in a single bullet point, if anyone's got an answer to this, what changes from our mindset from the previous matchup into this matchup? What's the biggest difference?
We can
No.
dive because they're slow. I don't know, that's my thought.
So they've got more exposed core, like their Briggs Zen, obviously, right?
Yeah.
And this guy's about to switch to Tracer, by the way, if that wasn't clear. Okay, anyone else? Any other thoughts? Pop quiz time? Who wants a gold star? All right, so
I just think fights are decided a lot quicker because they don't really have stabilization tools.
yeah, they're a lot,
Just fixing it.
in a sense, they are a lot more, what's the word I want to use? Not one-dimensional, but they are a lot simpler in the way they take fights. They have clearer win conditions, and that's going to be Zen shooting people and Ball disrupting and engaging and Tracer finishing off kills and stuff like that, versus us, a composition who can do a lot in the mid-fight, right? It's not as clear what we're trying to do. It's not as clear as Ball is the engage tool or Monkey is the engage tool, right? It's a lot different. In my opinion, so the term faster is a little bit deceptive in my opinion, so because I think we actually need to play this matchup a lot slower. But I definitely agree the fights should end a lot faster, which I think is what you were trying to get at. Yeah,
Sorry.
so the reason I think this composition needs to be played a lot slower in this matchup is literally the reason is that they have a stronger neutral. Their neutral game is untouchable compared to ours. And honestly, I think this composition has the best neutral in any composition in existence. Maybe stronger if you swap in like a Pharah somehow or an Echo. But neutral-wise, you know what they have that we don't? Range damage.
Okay, there we go.
Exactly. So if we're on Workshop Expanse, there's no terrain at all, right? It's just a big open box. And we're 6 people over here, there's 6 people over there. They win every single fight because of 1 hero. Actually, because of 2 heroes. This by the way, I was kind of memeing about this on stream earlier, but unironically, this character is Winston with guns, and he can shoot the shit out of our Winston, and there's nothing he can do about it. Same thing happens with our Tracer. All of a sudden, their Tracer is just Reaper, but with blinks and recall. How much more flexible, how much more can they work with their tools without actually doing anything than we can? They can do so much more in neutral. They can control more space. They can threaten more angles. But what we can do is play 6-man and all in. Exactly right. If we can take fast, hard-hitting engages that end quickly so that characters like this, and arguably like Brig as well, don't get to find exponential value the more the fight develops. So when I say this fight should be taken slowly, what I mean by that, and what that looks like in-game, means we should take fights cover to cover, and we shouldn't be forcing engages unless we know we have guaranteed value. So what I would expect... Actually, let's not even talk about what I expect. Let's talk about how we handle first fight here. So let's play it out. It's alright.
You're on ball comp? Okay. Let's honestly just stay on point. Let's just stay on point. Osama will flank.
We can live forever,
And then
pretty much.
we are going to hard dive beeline when they start walking up. Like
Alright,
Vanguard.
so we make the call to stay on point, and we're going to hard dive. We're going to beeline their Zen whenever we find an opportunity. There's one thing I don't like about this, and it's the fact that we're on point for it. By playing on point, we are limiting our reach versus even playing in courtyard here. It's obviously like a longer reach to where Zenyatta is likely to be positioned. Like, best case for Zenyatta, he's able to play up here, but he can't shoot shit from up here, so he's going to be playing on the ground. He's going to be playing towards the Mega. Maybe he's rotating towards our side just to split angle pressure. He's not going to be playing by these Lions. He's not going to be playing on flanks. These are unaccessible territories for Zenyatta, so we know where he wants to play because he wants to shoot down these lanes. And again, that's what this comp does better than us. They can shoot us sooner and for longer, so we need to not let them do that. By going on point, we're just extending this distance unnecessarily. Again, we're touching the point before it's unlocked. There's not really a reason to be here other than the natural cover, but we get somewhat equal natural cover here. And again, this is just as threatening of a choke point as these are. It's just we're exposing a little bit less. In addition, the people that go on flanks, the ball and the tracer, have to expose more by being on point. This is more open space compared to the space outside of point. There's more corners for them to escape from. There's more grapple angles. There's easier blink cooldown timers and stuff like that. There's more health packs as well on the outside for them. So forcing them to expose more is essentially how we start the neutral here. We want to close the distance as fast as possible to the Zen, yes, but again, it's not always about what we want to do. It's about avoiding what we can so that we can get to that late game as soon as possible. And ideally, their Zen just walks up to point and we dive them, right? But that's never going to happen. So by forcing ourselves onto point, we unfortunately force ourselves into an even slower playstyle, which is going to be reactive to the enemy ball. So we'll see what they do here. I actually disagree with the way they take this. If I was playing the ball Zen team, and I think if they were playing it optimally, what they would be doing is their ball and their tracer would be moving together, so just completely deny hack value onto the enemy ball, because actually here, I'll just play it out. We're about to see what happens. So the tracer's tickling us. Now the ball and tracer are together.
We don't need to do anything right now. We can honestly chill and just look at the tanks when they end.
The ball gets hacked. As soon as the hack comes out, the tracer's there to follow up and deny follow-up on the hack. This is not only splitting the value from our hack, we're not able to focus this. Again, we are 6-man. If we are committing to something, we are committing as 6-man. I would like to see in this moment all 6 of us committing on this ball and just saying, fuck the point. If they commit people to the point, that's actually better for us, because fighting on point would be ideal versus fighting into Zen sightlines. We can at least LOS some of Zen sightlines here. If we can't outright engage on the Zenyatta, we need to mitigate him as much as possible. We don't have a Rhine shield. We don't even have much of a Winston bubble anymore based on the nerfs. But what we can do is just ignore this positional quote-unquote advantage that we have and just commit to our win condition. And if we kill ball here, then yeah, sure, then we can sit on point. Or then, since we've capped it now, we can even sit behind the point and just completely ignore the Zen. There's no one else to really threaten us anymore, and we just wait them out. But the Sombra gets a 1-clip on our... Or sorry, the Tracer gets a 1-clip on our Sombra here, and we don't even manage to kill the ball. We call the speed on the Brig. Not a bad engage target, but again, their Zen is just free-firing during all of this. Luckily, their ball isn't currently engaged in the fight because we forced him out early, which, again, I think should be part of our neutral pressure, is being ready to absorb their aggressive resources so they can't be used defensively. And really what I mean by that is making sure ball tracer don't have free reign during a fight so that when we want to engage, they're not there to disrupt us, which we did against the ball, so that was good. Fortunately, it cost us our Sombra. We commit onto the Brig. Now that the ball's on us, this should be their playground. Zen is free firing. Is this a Sombra or Tracer? I'm not actually sure, but both their Sombra and their Tracer right now should be relatively free. They should be relatively free to find hacks, and the Tracer should be free to find Discord kills. This is slight disadvantage. But because we get the kill, because we get the DMAC, again, I don't see why D.Va really even dies there. sure they've got less healing, but D.Va just like flying away in those moments makes our comp like very, very hard to commit with. And then the ball jumps off the map and we stabilize.
I can come back fast.
These are the type of situations that are razor thin margins that we're winning by, though. Again, I don't think the enemy team is playing this composition optimally. I think if they were, we would struggle a lot more. But already, we're starting to play this a lot smarter. The way we're like not afraid to give up point here and looking to commit more as a group, I think is really, really strong. We're literally like a bunch of cockroaches. If they ever find us with Zen and Discord, they can step on us. But if we're just constantly moving through the rafters or whatever through the walls of the house, and then all of a sudden when someone's caught off guard, we can jump out at them, we are winning. We are winning these fights because we have more all-in potential, exactly like I said. And that's usually off the back of failed engaged resources from the enemy team. So Ball and Tracer failing to find value and being forced out, or hacks, essentially. And best case, again, I don't want to rely on this because I think it's inconsistent, being able to close the distance on the Zen. And we can try to force that in lots of different ways, but it usually only starts after forcing the Ball out or forcing the Tracer out or finding a high priority hack. Very unfortunate. So again, a lot of the priorities here compared to the mirror change mainly on the Sombra in terms of how you're positioning. So this is not a composition where you're getting backline hacks, right? This is not a composition where you're hacking a D.Va and that means an all-in. Because if we all-in a D.Va, all of a sudden Ball Tracer fuck us up. All of a sudden Zen is still discording us. We need to take down the high priority targets. So very often you're playing slower, or if you are playing aggressive and you are taking like off angles and stuff like that, it's strictly with the intention of farming EMP because our all-in potential, as long as they're not feeding, which sometimes they are and we can take advantage of that, but as long as they're not feeding, your hacks aren't going to be able to find a lot of kills against this composition. So looking for counter hacks to play off their tempo, or looking to just farm EMP with your aggression, or whenever you can, looking to all-in Zen, of course, but again, that's not a consistent win condition we can always just rely on. Now that we're in the mid-fight, now that they've walked up into vulnerable space, look how free this engages. Critical, I like the confidence here, but again, this is one of those mid-fight tempo ultimates that we need better communication around. If we knew you were going for this level of play, it's more than just, can we focus Brig? It's, I'm going balls to the wall aggressive, follow me up, and we'll win, kind of thing. So, again, ideally, in these mid-fights, the communication starts before the play happens, and we're almost like, we're pre-moving. There's this concept in sport, and I think it's really relevant in boxing, and it's like the reason like you see boxers like bouncing on their toes a lot is because you could actually react faster once you're already moving. If you're standing flat-footed on the ground and then you try to dodge a punch, you're going to be so much slower than if you had taken a little hop and then all of a sudden your shoulders are moving faster, your head's bobbing out of the way faster, you're reading the situation faster. So if we're trying to react to Critical's Coalescence here, or if maybe it's Dylan's D.Va Bomb, or it's Infected's Primal, or it's whatever it is, if we're trying to react to that, we're already moving before we see it. Otherwise, we're going to be slow. Otherwise, we're not going to find as much as we potentially could have, and maybe at worst case, we even gets us punished.
I got the D.Va mech.
I can go main here.
The good news is, the longer these fights take, as long as we don't all die, obviously, it's actually a lot better for us often, as long as Zen's not killing anybody. And I don't know if you noticed, but he didn't get a discard out during that trance, and the trance didn't really do anything. Again, they're not playing this optimally, I would say, but we're doing a good job stabilizing in these moments, and that shouldn't be discounted. All right, they're swapping onto an Echo here. I personally think Echo Tracer would be the best possible comp versus what we're playing. But obviously Echo, again, very hard to deal with unless they kind of feed into us into poor positioning. Again, like counter hack on Ball, even though they EMP us here, like we're doing everything we need to do. Their Zen just got to the fight and he's not finding any priority kills. There's no one to follow up Zen's damage. The Sombra's dead. The Echo was just getting to the fight now. They're playing this very, very disconnected, which granted, it's a very disconnected composition, but their timing is all over the place, leading us to have an easy stabilization, easy to use our Moira and Reaper resources, and then counter hacks come falling into our lap and things like that. That looked extremely one-sided, right? That looked like we were just absolutely diffing them in terms of matchup and in terms of outplaying them. I think it's really important to address the fact that they played like absolute dog shit, but we only half the time capitalized on it. That initial Ball hack should 100% net a kill for us and should never result in a death for us, for example. The early Zen trance, like, that just doesn't happen. These kind of things are easy to discount, like when you're in scrim, and it feels good to win these situations, but I really want you guys to challenge yourself and look at your shoes, or look at yourselves, put yourself back in your own shoes, I should say, in these moments, and really push yourself to ask what should have gone better. And number one thing for me is little simple things like first fight. I don't think there's any reason for us to go to point. At best, I'd like to see us, again, like if we were playing, imagine we're playing against like a soldier or an Ashe. Our priority wouldn't be, or even better, like a Pharah. Our priority wouldn't be like to touch point. All that gets us is the point. Once the point's gone, once they're building ultimates, once they're free farming us with Zen Discord or Pharah rockets or Echo stickies or Ashe dynamites and things like that, things very quickly go wrong, especially if we fall behind in ult economy. There's no reason for us to fall behind in ult economy when we can build Coalescence so fast. As long as we're avoiding like Zen spam and the most of the damage we're taking is from like Ball, Tracer, Sombra, we can very easily heal that up, stabilize those aggressive moments, and then go back in with more resources than they're ready for. Getting something like an early Cole is like grounds for trying to close the distance between like here and all the way down in the Mega, because we have more than usual resources, right? It's the same thing, like if Zen steps up, that's closer than usual, so that's more than we need, so then we can close the distance. If we hack their ball and he's not able to stabilize for their Zen, that's more of an aggressive reason. These are not end-all, be-all win conditions. These are advantage states that we're playing for. So forcing the advantage means not freely giving up advantages to the enemy team. Again, looking at who their carries are in this composition, very much so the carry in this comp is Zenyatta. Not giving up free opportunities when we're able to find small advantages like hacking the ball in our backline. Being able to capitalize on smaller things faster in the mid-fight like that Coalescence play. These are all things that we can clean up a lot and make us 10 times more consistent than we're currently looking. There's so much to say about communication, about the depth of this composition here, and about this matchup in particular, but I think this was a really good example of us kind of winning by default because neither team was necessarily reaching their limits. And by default, this is an easier, I shouldn't say easier, this composition has a lower skill floor. Sorry, I don't know if you guys can hear that, but there's a car alarm going on outside. There's a lower skill floor to this composition than this composition. It's so much harder to line up timings between Zen sightlines, ball, and tracer timings, and all these kind of things, and absorbing pressure with low healing, and all these kind of things. And avoiding hacks as a ball player just in general compared to a Winston player, right? But that doesn't mean we did a good job here. And I'm not trying to shit on you guys. I'm not trying to say like get good or anything like that. But I want you to really criticize yourselves in these moments and really try to work on what we can work on here. All right.
I have a question just like about just the holding point thing. Saying like where we lose value because of like Zen poke and stuff like that. But I'm thinking like if you try to hold up like in grass and stuff and have like that short distance to cross or an engage and stuff, does like why can't you just like play like point or like backup point?
Yeah, like back here.
Really have those angles and just focus on denying their ball and tracer because that's what's going to give them the engage value, and they can only come one of two ways really.
Yeah, I think that's equally good. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So I'm very much, and this is sort of like a new thing for my coaching style, so I'm still trying to find good words to present this information, but I'm very much of the opinion that there is no right or wrong answers here. I like holding here more than I like holding on point. I like holding here almost as much or just as much as I like holding in grass for different reasons, obviously, but everything you just said ticks all the boxes for why you would want to hold there. The biggest thing for me is like addressing why we went to point, which was just simply because it had good LOS. There's lots of good options that have just as good LOS, but give us more advantages. So yeah, absolutely right. And when you're looking at playing this composition on different maps, obviously we're not going to talk about every single map in the game here. We didn't even really talk about good positioning on Lijiang Gardens or anything like that. When it comes to taking positional advantages, the biggest thing you guys need to ask yourself is like, what are you denying and what are you getting from that position? On point, we're getting the point. Is that good enough? We're denying sightlines in any of these locations. Point gives us point. This gives us more Zen pressure. This gives us better ball absorb. Which one of those is a higher priority for us? That's the only question you need to ask when it comes to first fight positioning. And then we can play off different advantages like ult economy, like having advantage on point capture and being able to hold space versus advantages on mix-up when we're attacking and things like that. But first fights and prioritizing our rollouts and things like that, we need to ask ourselves what we're fighting for. As long as we understand that, you guys can go wherever the hell you want, as long as there's a reason for it. That's all that matters. Any other questions or concerns or thoughts about what we saw in Lijiang there. There's 2 maps. I didn't go over Control Center because we didn't play the comp, and I wanted to focus on this comp for this review. But any questions, any thoughts, anything we want to talk about?
What do you do against fair comp?
Same thing you do against Zen comp. You avoid the spam.
You just avoid spam. Okay. We had a heated debate about this one scrim.
Okay.
Whether we should stack to avoid spam, or just play in better spots to avoid spam and let our Diva mark Pharah.
So assuming this comp,
like,
but
after
with like
rotation.
Pharah Mercy.
Yeah. Maybe not on this map, but like on Lijiang,
Yeah. So
like after we've rotated a point, not like on the rotation.
right. Again, I think you could do the same
Or
thing of
wherever.
holding behind point, and that gives us the opportunity to hack Pharah out of the air if she tries to contest there. Unfortunately, it is a pretty good Pharah map, to be honest. So it is going to be really hard to pressure the Pharah. We could also do things like hold out in the open and force them to come to point and then brawl them on point. If we hold out in Lions and then pressure whoever is on the ground, assuming they're still running a Zenyatta, which is, again, a big anchor for them, we can just make sure Zen doesn't have any space to work with whatsoever. Pharah's space is very much dictated by what walls she can glue herself to, and when we're playing out in the open, there's no real reason for her to be out there. She's going to shoot from range from like down behind point or something, right? I would assume. I would refer to our Pharah player here if Zest is here, but mainly it's just avoiding as much spam as possible while also denying space from the rest of the core. And then once they're forced into a specific rotation, typically to point, then we can look to capitalize. Either the Pharah is going to be forced to get over aggressive to find value, in which case Diva can potentially find some value, or Sombra can potentially find some hack value, or we just build a fast coalescence all in their core, or we even coal their Pharah Mercy if there's an opportunity for it.
So you stack for Cole, maybe not like 6-man stack.
Yeah.
But other than that, you can just avoid the damage. That makes sense.
The only question I have in general is that a lot of the time our team focuses on rotations and like making pretty long rotations in order to set up for a fight. How important is rotations versus being opportunistic when it comes to value? Like, for example, if there's an echo that can be hacked if our team pushes,
Right.
should we look to like take that opportunistic value, or should we really focus on our rotations? Because 6-man to me feels like a comp where we really should just like be more greedy and like more like, for example, like with the ball and the right of point on Lijiang Tower on Night Market. Like same
React to
thing,
that
right?
faster.
If someone react to that like instantly and don't like focus on just like staying safe. And then the same thing with like even against a Pharah comp, right? A lot of times we're focusing on sustaining when we really should just be focusing on going somewhere else. Like just keep going.
So yeah, for sure. There's 2 things to keep in mind. Whenever we are looking for opportunities, we need to be very realistic. So for example, if there is, so say we're playing in here and a Diva is right here and Diva gets hacked. Is it a realistic expectation to burst out of here and expect to kill Diva and not get punished for it? It's a hard question to answer. Obviously, alt economy plays an aspect, all these sort of things. But realistically, in this type of composition, they have a lot of tools to sustain, and the amount, sorry, not sustain, but to counter or engage, and the amount of time it might take to burn someone like a Diva is depending on positioning. Obviously, if the Diva's here versus here, all these sort of things change, versus high ground, obviously, those kind of things. And it's about like risk versus reward. Ultimately, I 100% agree. This is a very flexible, in-the-moment type composition. I would say the same is true of both these compositions, actually. It looks a lot different. This is a lot more like staying grouped and bursting out into potential opportunities, and this is a more like staying scattered and bleeding resources out before you're able to find a 2-man committal or something like that. But both compositions need to play very flexibly. I don't know if you guys have seen Coach Moon talk about Shanghai Dragon's philosophy going into the grand finals. But how he talked about how he's trying to mimic the philosophy of, I think, soccer teams he was talking about. And for a lot of these situations on a soccer team, it's not about a set play like American football is. It's not about like you run here, I pass you the ball, and this is going to beat this set strat. And it's like a rock, paper, scissors matchup. I know football is not that simple, but just to ease the transition a little bit. In soccer, it's a lot more about playing opportunities and reacting to what the enemy is doing in response to what you're trying to do. The same is very true of this composition and this composition. If you are able to capitalize on an over-aggressive moment, on someone literally inting into you and feeding like the ball we saw and getting hacked, then yes, absolutely you need to capitalize on that, because otherwise you're not guaranteed to have the reach to do anything else. You're never guaranteed to have the reach to all in the Zen. That's why I started this off, and we were talking about the mirror initially, but that's why I started this off talking about it's not always about actualizing your quote-unquote win condition, it's about forcing advantages. And if you can press small advantages into big advantages, like the advantage of staying outside of Zen LOS and being able to limit ball's attack angles, that's going to lead into a bigger advantage of getting a hack on the ball, which is going to potentially lead to a bigger advantage of killing the ball. That's going to lead to a bigger advantage of all of a sudden ball's not able to counter or engage, and now we are able to all in the Zen, as long as he's not like in spawn or something. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. It's just that line I feel like is pretty gray, especially when like
it's razor
in
thin.
six
Yeah,
man,
absolutely.
especially when like in 6-man, like you have to be like all on the same page. And so I guess like the question is, when it comes to that, who takes priority when it comes to shot calling, and like when it comes to that, right? Because obviously Sombra's shot calling a lot, and then you have your main tank shot calling a lot, and then even like some other players in 6-man, because it's just like a very flexible comp.
Yeah, you're gonna hate my answer, but it's all 6 of you. And I think the
that
best
sucks.
example, the best example I can give is the mid-fight Diva Bombs and mid-fight Coalescence that we saw, and to a lesser extent the mid-fight Primals. Those need to be acted on at a team level, and if they're like, if not at a team level, at least at like a duo level. Like again, like if we're able to primal and bomb together, those things should have more synergy than just stabilizing both at the same time. You're sinking too many eggs into one basket at that moment. Instead, try to find more value by coordinating as much as you can. Obviously, can always only ask so much of you guys. I'm not trying to be unrealistic with these expectations, but in these moments, if we're able to act sooner and we're able to coordinate our intentions faster, then we're going to get more value just inherently, assuming we are actually listening to communication and actually following up on each other, right? It's the same as if we get a mid-fight hack or even a pre-fight hack. We coordinate these things and we call these things out with the intention of follow-up. It doesn't mean we win a team fight off of it. It always means that we can try to push a little bit more than we could individually. So this is most obvious when we get mid-fight ults. When we get a mid-fight Cole, Primal, Beat, Blossom, EMP, literally any 6 of these ultimates can be used mid-fight and close out a team fight. It doesn't always mean that like Coalescence is followed by 6 people diving the same target, but it can mean, okay, I'm coaling their Echo in the air, so maybe D.Va can go actually finish the kill instead of just stave them off. I'm looking to Reaper Blossom, so Deco's going to reposition with our Reaper and look to speed boost him and get any damage peeled away from him, things like that. I'm looking to Primal. Okay, I'm going to look to isolate someone who's being Primal and finish them off with Reaper, because Primal's probably going to force a defensive resource. This level of coordination is a different type of team play than comps like Brawl, than comps like Double Shield or stuff like that, where we have very specific resources for very specific jobs. We need to be extremely flexible and willing to coordinate with all of these resources. Otherwise, we're going to fall behind in ult economy. We're going to fall behind in like base resource economy, like being forced to Wraith, Bubble, Fade early, amp speed, whatever it is. And then we're not going to have as many opportunities as we would have if those things weren't forced or if we were at an advantage. So I know this seems like a non-answer, and I know this is probably disappointing to hear, but the end of the day, it's really up to you guys to find opportunities. Every single person is a playmaker in this composition, but it's the follow-up from the team and the expected follow-up and then like the actualization of that follow-up that determines whether or not we can actually coordinate. It's not about set plays. It's not about every first fight we farm Cole first. It's not always, okay, force Monkey Bubble, then we jump and we int all into them and things like that. It's not according to a script like that. It's flexible, it adapts on the fly, and it changes. And a lot of the time, it changes in the enemy's favor. If they're starting to use ultimates first, if one of us gets hacked, if they're using ultimates like Primal or Diva Bomb and things like that, we need to also react defensively. And that's again why I wanted to highlight the sort of use of language in your communication. It's not just kite and push. Those are not the only 2 options. It's soft reset, it's walk it, it's surround them, it's chill, it's whatever we want to say in those moments to make sure that we as 6 people understand the situation as best as possible. I guarantee you guys are fucking cracked players, right? You're the cracked cats for a reason. So when we're in these team fights, I know you all have good instincts, but it's not enough to rely on instincts unless we are literal AI communicating with each other through the internet about what our intentions are and what we're trying to do in every given moment, which is unrealistic, right? So we need to take a beat, communicate these intentions, and sync them up across our team as often as possible. That means being realistic about what you're expecting in terms of follow-up from your teammates, but it also means being as opportunistic as possible. If you're not able to find your own opportunities, you need to immediately jump on the opportunities of your teammates. And I think there's no better example. Where was that? There's no better example than this hack on the ball. What is anyone else doing while this ball is hacked? If the answer is nothing, why aren't you killing the ball?
We can honestly
That's this concept in a nutshell. What is our Reaper doing? What is our D.Va doing? What is our Monkey doing? If we're not killing the ball, what are we doing? And if it's nothing, we need to be thinking bigger. We need to be thinking more macro-wise. Because otherwise, what we're doing is we're looking for individual opportunities. And again, I don't want to call any individuals out. I'm not trying to make you guys feel bad or anything. But what's clear in this moment is that we're not playing like a team. And that's what needs to be fixed in this composition. And I have to imagine every composition. Obviously, you guys, everyone's trying to improve team play. Everyone, including the Overwatch League. Like, no one is the perfect team. And we're never going to see a quote-unquote paper-perfect team. But these are the ideals that we're trying to strive towards so that when we can realize this, maybe like 5 times out of 10 in a match, those are 5 fights that we would have won that we otherwise wouldn't have. These are 5 situations where we get an advantage where otherwise we would have stayed in neutral. These are 5 situations where instead of dying and 6-man wiping and waiting for the next fight and depending on ultimates, we're able to pull things back from the brink. That's the difference between a coordinated and uncoordinated team. That's the difference between 6 top 500 level players in a ranked game and playing in a scrim. Being able to trust and coordinate and sync up in these crucial moments. Because again, it's not just, okay, they've got more ults, they're going to win. Or they're pulling off their win condition, so we got to counter it. It's not that simple. It's as moments pass us by and pop up in front of us that we need to find the reason to be a team together. All right. So I'll pose the question to you guys as a team. Do you guys think this is a good go-to composition on defense on Blizzard World First Point? Is this what we want to play here, or is this just a learning experience?
I don't think.
I think it's like a learning experience, to be honest. We usually play double shield, so you know, at least prior to this week.
Yeah.
Gotcha. That being said,
Brawl is just better if you're gonna run a Brawly comp.
Fair enough. So with all that in mind, what about this map makes this not the pick? What makes this not the go-to composition? Because we can agree at least this is
Open
a good
sightlines.
composition. Open sightlines. Okay. Anything else? All good. I mean, this is just a pop quiz. Like I'm not trying to fool you guys or anything. I'm just trying to gauge your guys' sort of definitions and feeling about this composition in specific situations, so I know how to give you guys feedback. So I absolutely agree.
About 6-man on this map.
Yeah,
Fuck you, Tickety.
yeah. And the last thing I'll add on top of open sightlines, like obviously like huge sightlines, right, all over the place, wherever they want to be. On top of that, just the fact that King of the Hill is a mirrored map. And this is a more linear map. They're literally going from spawn A to point B, and they're always going in this direction. Granted, like they can flip the map, sure, and things like that, but that's on them. There's nothing we can do to force a map flip here, and that means anytime we go aggressive, we're going to have to sort of boomerang our movements. If we're going aggressive, we still have to fall back this way. This is not what this composition likes to do. As we saw in Lijiang Garden, one of our most popular places to stabilize was in the dojo. When we're on Lijiang Night Market, if we're going aggressive, we can push to the outside mega. We can push around the point and go around loop to loop with them and stuff like that. We have a lot more opportunities to stabilize once we've spent our resources that don't end up being still in enemy sightlines. So anytime we're fighting for space with this composition, I think it's really important to note that anything we fight for, we need to benefit from. And that means positionally, not just like kills. Obviously, like if we get, like using that D.Va example again, like if we hack the D.Va and we demech her, that's an obvious advantage. But then if we're stuck out in the open, even if we kill D.Va and like say Zen's up here or Zen's back here, like there's nothing we can do further to keep pressuring the Zen. Like granted, there's not no natural cover. There's still some places we could play around, but just as an example here. And I think the best example really is on point. If there's someone on point hacked and we're bursting out of the woodwork here to punish them, and their Zen's still up here and their ball is still wrapping around point and doing whatever he wants, like where do we go from there? I think that's a really important concept for this composition, which is kind of why I wanted to bring up that just as a talking point. No real point to bring that up necessarily, but just wanted to highlight that the strength of this composition lies in its stability after the fact, not just the fact that it can all in, because any comp technically can all in, but they choose not to because it benefits them better to take slower fights, to take better angles, and other things like that, which generally for map types outside of Koth can benefit from those default things just because of the layout of these maps. So yeah, let's take a look at this defense here. Again, this isn't our go-to comp, so I'm not going to talk map specifics, but I want to talk about how we're taking these team fights and what it looks like on a fundamental level, how we're using our resources, how we're using our ultimates, how we're using our positioning, and whether or not we're getting the most out of these situations as possible. Again, any questions, any thoughts, feel free to bring them up, but let's get started.
Alright, set up.
Again, situation like this, like if we're not doing anything from here, why are we here? We know what they're playing. Are we expecting their Zen to walk up here and we're going to all in them? Probably not. So what is the purpose of this position? One, avoid spam. But again, if Zen takes a position like this, does that really become true? And two, give ourselves as much all-in potential as possible. And ideally, three, be able to punish whatever they are trying to do. In this case, they're likely trying to touch the point, if nothing else, if not set up Zen positioning. So we need to be able to punish one of these two things, either this rotation or people touching the point. I personally don't think we can do much of either from this position, but I want to hear from you guys. Is this something you think would be better positioned somewhere else? Would we be better off sitting on point? Would we be better off in snacks, on second point, on high ground? Where do we want to be? And why, essentially?
A lot of teams run double shield. If we're still
Okay.
there, it's good for them.
Okay, yeah, fair enough.
But we just need to scout if we're gonna do like setup because we have time
Yeah.
to rotate if our Sombra's like in their spawn.
Yeah, for sure. I would like to say, if anytime we are running Sombra on defense, kind of no reason not to scout. You can just put your translocator up here, TP back in stealth, and then relay information, both where they're coming and what they're running. But small
Second
thing.
we on ball comp, just go bottom left. Or point.
Bottom left, like down here or down here?
No, like under where the tracer is.
Okay, yeah. That's fair. I think you got two options, playing down here or playing in snacks. I might be a little bit biased just because we always played snacks when we were playing old school rush comps against Pharah comps on this map, and obviously this exposes Pharah the most. I think consequently it also sort of exposes ball the most. I think these Sombra angles are better than these Sombra angles, for example, but it's a small detail. Either way is fine. Again, this is a great situation of what are we doing? If we're not doing anything, we're repositioning. Let me see if I can do something real quick, actually. So if you guys open that image, the only part I want you guys to focus on is the bottom right between setup, posturing, and execution. So the difference between committing to a fight and not committing to a fight often looks like giving up space, right? If we're committing, we take space from them, we commit resources, we commit cooldowns and ultimates. If we're at disadvantage, we often have to either use resources to keep the space that we have, have Baptiste, Lamp, and Maywall in Brawl, or in this composition, we could say things like Moira Orb, or even like Reaper Wraith to get back to team and things like that, or we have to give up space, in which case we go back to setting up. In either of these cases, it doesn't necessarily change our fight plan. In either of these cases, we are staying flexible enough to adapt to situational contexts, right? To a ball touching point, to someone getting hacked, whether that's on our side or the enemy side, things like that. The biggest thing we need to shift our focus away from is the execution. If we focus on posturing, then we are staying ready to adapt to advantages or disadvantages. If we're focusing on execution, we're sitting there waiting for an advantage, and if it doesn't happen, we're lost. And I'm worried that's what's happening somewhat consistently with this composition, because it's obvious what we do in advantage. We run it down, we kill everybody. But when we're at disadvantage, whether that's positionally, because they've got better sight lines, because they've got more ultimates, whatever it is, we kind of don't know what to do. And I shouldn't say that. That's a little bit too cruel. You guys know what to do in theory. It's just we're not coordinating what to do as a team. I think individually you guys all know this as a concept, but as a team, we're seeing situations like this, where we're trying to make the best out of a bad situation, and it literally just makes no sense. You can see from the situation it makes no sense. The biggest thing here is just none of us are really doing anything, and that leads to them getting a free pick and space. And this is more just a war of attrition now, where we're playing against the clock instead of playing against the enemy team. Yes, we're on defense. We are trying to run the clock down as much as possible, but that's also what they're doing when they're finding some sort of advantage, in this case, point progress. So faster reactions here, faster focus on adapting to disadvantage when we can't force an advantage, and not trying to play by a script of Sombra hack, go kill hack target. It's not that simple, and we need to shift away from that. Luckily, we get some good combo on that ball. Now that we're at advantage, how easy is it to call it engage? Like, any single one of you could be calling this engage right now, and I'm sure all of you are already of the same mindset, even without saying anything. Just the fact that we got 2 huge kills, we don't even need anything more than that. We know we can push this because we know, okay, there's nothing that's going to force our resources defensively, so why the hell not throw them aggressively? This doesn't even need to net a bunch of kills right now. But the problem is, in the situation, it was given to us. It was a gift from the heavens that this ball just inted and our Sombra diffed the Tracer. That's not expected to happen. But yeah, otherwise, obviously, good execution. The problem is we need good execution when it's not obvious either. All right, now we're calling to hold point. When it comes to holding space too, this is something I was thinking about the other day. I think Echo and I were talking about it when we were watching some Oasis University. When it comes to holding space here, it's very, very common to want to just hold together with this composition. And I think that's fine when we're forcing an advantage. If we are all hiding, waiting for EMP, looking to go in aggressively, I think we want to be together because we're trying to actualize our win condition faster. When we're in an actual neutral situation, and anything could happen, we could get hacked, for example. They could EMP if they, obviously they don't have it, but if they had EMP and they could EMP, obviously we don't want to be stacked for that kind of thing. So what should our positioning look like in a neutral versus this composition? Number one thing, we need to have scouting. We need to know where their ball and tracer are coming from. Ideally, we have people like D.Va and Lucio away from the core so that they can, one, mark more space. Like even just having D.Va up here, and that's an A, by the way. D.Va marking like here, here, and like here for Sombra spy checking. And Lucio, obviously, like maybe if we had beat and we were waiting for EMP, you can hide all you want. But even without beat or EMP, you can be doing things like walking with our Sombra. If Sombra's trying to counter hacks, we could be doing things like staying with our D.Va if we need to have added pressure in the backline. We could be doing things like position with our Winston to go aggressively, depending on what sort of win condition we're playing for. There's lots of different types of holds here. We need to know what we want to do, but what we might need to do is essentially what I'm trying to get here. And I know this is kind of getting muddy. I'm losing my words a little bit here. So let me rephrase. The biggest thing we're doing in neutral right now is just waiting for our win condition. And if our only win condition is Sombra hacks, that's inconsistent. Especially when they have tools to force out a Sombra, like Tracer, like Ball Tracer finding space. There's nothing Sombra can do against Ball Tracer, right? That shouldn't be expected of our Sombra player. At the same time, obviously, don't want to get caught out by the Tracer. There should be lots of ways we can counterplay that with translocator usage and stuff like that. But just in a nutshell, we need more than that in terms of at least scouting and some sort of denial, some sort of space denial in a space like this. And it's the same as when we were on Lijiang Gardens. When we have that forward EMP play, yeah, absolutely. Everyone hug the corner and get ready to push in. Although, like I said, I'd like to see Winston going on a more creative angle for that. But regardless, we're all looking for the same win condition because it's somewhat guaranteed. If it gets called off, it's not going to be because the enemy team's engaging on us, because we're looking to hit them before they're even capable of engaging on us. But it's going to be because something called off the play, and then we reset back to a true neutral. A true neutral here should look a little bit differently. We at the very least be able to contest more space with our D.Va on high ground here. I don't hate the Reaper up here either. The Reaper can either react to situations on point or even look for TP plays aggressively. I don't hate that. Our Sombra player just came back from spawn, so we don't see her on the map, but we can be looking for off-angle hacks or at the very least scouting during these moments. Or if we're looking to play defensively, we can play like around the point on the high grounds in different angles like this so that we're still ready for the same win condition. If something happens over here, we build EMP or we build Cole, there's still easy enough to group up in these situations and commit to our 6-man, but it doesn't mean that's the only thing we're capable of. And this is a lot more relevant in the mirror, I would say. And the biggest thing being able to avoid enemy Sombra EMPs. But number one thing, obviously, is just being able to be flexible in these moments. It's not about only finding our win condition. And I've already hammered this point home 1,000 times, so I'll just keep going from there.
Wait, their brig just dropped main, I think. I'm going on brig.
No, don't see anything.
Okay, get out.
So yeah, exactly this. We see the brig. We want to commit to her. We commit a few resources, the Winston jump, that maybe I think we see empty speed. I think we bubbled here, obviously. We don't get the kill. This is okay as long as they're not finding something else at the same time. And what's going to stop them from finding something else at the same time is going to be Sombra and D.Va scouting positions and denial of flank aggression. So denying their Ball Tracer from getting behind us. If our Ball Tracer was behind us in this moment, Critical might die. Or D.Va might get demeched. Or something catastrophic might happen, for example. And as long as we're able to avoid those situations with good pre-fight neutral positioning, we can go forward like this, even if we don't find a lot of value, with more confidence. That's what I'm trying to get at here.
Okay, 2, 1.
Good counter hack on the ball. Again, I don't think they're playing this comp optimally. They're exposing a lot to our Sombra, which is great for us. And again, now, mid-fight here. Again, small thing there, Critical, about getting hacked by the Sombra, but not a big deal. Don't want to linger on it. Going aggressive here is the obvious play. Getting the ball dead, even though we're down our Lucio, thanks to the Pulse Bomb, this is an easy commitment. again, this doesn't mean that we win the fight. Like, what if Zen builds trance and then we all in, we spend all our resources during Cole, and then he just trances, and then what? We're stuck over here with no damage left, with no resources to survive? What do we do then? These are the kind of moments I want us to be really wary of. I think this works out in our favor, if I'm remembering correctly.
I'm Mac too.
They do trance. We get demec'd. Maybe we don't win this like I thought. Okay, the primal is enough disruption to make sure that even though they trance, they don't get anything done. So, fair enough, but at the same time, it's not something I don't think we were ready for this. If, for example, the enemy Sombra had an EMP sooner, I think we would have been absolutely decimated. But don't need to linger on this. Again, I'm really happy with the engage that came through here. But again, it's sort of one of those somewhat obvious engages. And again, somewhat of an example of us committing with higher expectations that should be expected. So when it comes to resources and when it comes to alt economy, it's always going to be tricky to deal with things like beat, trance, EMP, because those are very easy counter engage tools. And very often when they find value counter engaging, that means a team fight win for the defensive team rather than the aggressors. So there's two ways to tackle this. There's one, we commit anyway and hope they don't find value, and that's worth it if we have things like EMP, if we have things like more layering ultimates, like if we primal or if we EMP first, it forces trance, and then we primal to keep them locked in here, and then we Reaper Blossom. It's just more than they can handle. It's more than one resource can nullify. That's fine. Otherwise, if we only have equal trades in terms of resources, if, say, both teams had EMP, if they had Trance, we had Beat, if we had Blossom, they had Mines or something like that, it's not a guaranteed play to all in this aggression. So as long as we're not individually overexposing here, which, again, we didn't get punished, this is fine. This is absolutely fine. My worry would be is what if we do things like Primal in and we get hacked during it? Or we Primal in and we get... like our whole team gets EMP'd, or they Diva Bomb to counter, and then there's nowhere else for us to go because we already used our cooldowns getting into the fight. Those kind of things. Actually, looking back at it, I think like a really well-timed EMP Diva Bomb from the enemy team would have gone a long way. But we came out ahead. We had the EMP to close out after the trance, or it was like the tail end of trance, I'm not entirely sure, and it was fine.
Diva's hack, Diva's hack, Diva's hack.
This is a great example of the enemy team trying to commit too early and expecting too much value from their EMP and mines. They got pretty much nothing. It's actually really unfortunate. In fact, it went down. He almost survived the situation, but he does go down. But even though they got that kill early, their ultimates found not nearly enough value. We got a good counter hack onto the enemy Diva, so she can't follow up the aggression. They're banking on these ultimates carrying them through the fight, and when they don't, they're completely lost. The same thing is happening to us, regardless of composition. Don't worry too much about, like, again, the specifics of this match. Look at how the teams are addressing these situations. Just to highlight a bit of communication there, the play slow for ults call, really good tempo call. Again, this isn't strong language. This isn't like, get the hell out of here, kite back to spawn kind of thing. This is play slow for ults, or chill, or whatever you want to call it. And everyone understood and reacted to that. Having good, clear communication in these moments is the difference maker. Again, like if we didn't do that and one person overstayed because they didn't get the memo of we were cutting back, waiting for ults or waiting for spawners, that's an easy way for Sombra's Trance to get forced, for, I don't know, for Moira's Fade to get forced, or for us not being able to stabilize after spending those resources, and then that's, again, a further excuse for them to push that advantage, go into us and capitalize on those, find kills more than just cooldowns. So, I can't stress this enough. Be flexible in these moments. Adapt to each other, adapt to as the situation calls for it, for whatever is needed, whatever in the moment decision making is required, and don't only rely, again, not a big fan of this coalescence, it's just, it was not clearly communicated, just to go back and listen to comms. We have Cole, push with Cole. This type of communication isn't strong enough for this moment. One, is Cole necessary? Two, if it's necessary, what's the play that's going along with it, kind of thing, right? Imagine if we were used like EMP at this moment and then we weren't ready to follow up, like we didn't have boosters available or some random thing, right? And then all of a sudden our EMP falls flat. Of course, we'd be livid in that situation. Cole's not that important. It's basically a cooldown in this comp, but we need to milk it for as much as it's worth, and that starts with the communication.
Calling a target to go on to.
Exactly. At bare minimum, we need to be target calling. That's day one stuff. That kind of communication there, better. I'd like to hear more from everybody. And again, I'd like to hear targets if you can. But ultimately, when EMP is the play, again, we kind of know it's a fight winner. More importantly than anything, look how faster our Reaper was to get into this fight compared to the fights on Li Zhang. And look how much faster he finds value. Now that we found that instant burst value, it also helps, obviously, that Zen was EMP'd and wasn't able to trance. So really nice EMP. But the fact that we're following up much faster means these kills come instantly. And we're able to guarantee the team fight win, not just forcing resources or forcing ultimate trades.
Okay, I have a question about the comp. I don't know how to phrase the question, but like our mid fights and like tempo control is like really crap. Like certain comps, like other than Brig Zen.
Yeah.
And it's all because of like our communications just kind of drop because it's like we know to initiate, we know to end, but the mid fight comps are just like not there.
Yeah, for sure.
Is there a way to practice that with something in mind? If that makes sense. Like, what should we focus on to try and improve our mid fight comms?
Number one thing. Yeah, I gotcha. The number one thing I would say is more focus around mid-fight ultimates. I think if all of our ultimates were communicated more effectively, a lot of these pieces would start falling into place. You can extrapolate that into base resources and especially enemy-based resources that are punishable. So it's not enough to say, like, I can jump this target because that target can fade away or speed away or you'll get booped or you'll get shot by, or you'll be hacked by Sombra. Too much can go wrong. But reacting to enemy cooldowns, sorry, my cat is screaming in the background. I don't know if you guys can hear that. Reacting to enemy cooldowns is a lot more consistent as long as there's enough follow-up. And again, it's sort of the concept of not overcommitting first fight when there's no ults on the table because we don't know how much reach we really have until we've forced resources out of them. There's a reason we don't just jump into them with Monkey Bubble first fight. Even though we can coordinate the shit out of that engage, there's too much that can answer that, right? It's one thing to be able to do something, and it's another thing to anticipate the enemy's reaction to it. And so if we can better anticipate their reaction by knowing that they've got less cards in hand, they've already used too many resources, they've already given up too much space, they're already too far behind on ult economy, those are much more punishable situations that should be acted on faster, and that comes from people communicating the important cooldowns. Monkey Jump in the mirror, #1 priority. Moira and Reaper fades. Good, but not always punishable. Amp, probably the weakest of the other things you could try to punish, but somewhat up there. And then obviously, Diva Hack is literally the ability that stops them from using resources, so it's kind of the equivalent of forcing them.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So the way you say, like, this composition, this Ball Zen composition, you find it easier in neutral, do you know why that is?
Because I'm in the backline of Brig. When I'm on Lucio, I can't do as much because I only have one CD.
I think...
If you really think about it.
I think at an individual level... Yeah, I gotcha. I think at an individual level too, it's just this composition is more reliant on individual playmaking. Like, sure, like Ball Tracer can coordinate and two-man dive people, but realistically, this comp is about kind of just outplaying them and drawing resources out of them and forcing them to use things on you so that others can pop off. And again, like, if you're playing Ball Tracer and you're looking for a dive and you call something like Brig Bashed on you, or, I mean, you're not probably playing against a Cassidy very often, but if Cass flashes you and Ball, that doesn't mean you're coordinating a two-man dive anymore, but that opens up Tracer to do a lot more. And it's the idea of them spending something that they can no longer use to answer something else. This is a lot harder with this composition because very often we're committing as a 6-man, and that's a lot harder to coordinate than it is a 1 or a 2-man. And individual resources aren't punishable by individuals very often. So we need to coordinate as a team to get those resources out in the first place, obviously, but then once they are out, the coordination to collapse, to commit, that's the word I'm looking for, sorry, and actually punish those resources is a team effort. And that's always going to be harder. And that's why we're here VOD reviewing together. That's why we're here talking together, getting on the same page together so that we all understand that concept so that we're not trying to rush individual value. If every fight that Reaper had Blossom, he said he's going to TP Blossom in, you know how poorly that would go. So it's not about just the individual play. It's about people setting each other up. And unfortunately, with a comp like this is a Winston, by the way, with a comp like this on the 6-man, even forcing resources is a team effort. And that's why, in my opinion at least, and from what I've seen of you guys play, that's why it's so much harder to coordinate this team, and it's so much harder to play neutral especially, because no one knows what to do individually. Everyone almost needs to be thinking macro-wise. I guess the Sombra can kind of do stuff individually just because she's Sombra, but everyone else is always thinking about what the team is trying to do, and that kind of leads to some paralysis where oh, I don't want to do anything individually, or I'm too slow to react because I don't see my team reacting, or no one's calmed anything, so I'm just going to sit here. And then that leads to slower play, that leads to lack of capitalization on resources, and that leads to a lack of advantage state, lack of win conditions, whatever you want to call it.
Just wanted to ask real quick, what about ball into 6-man and looking for openings?
I think it needs to be paired with a Tracer, unfortunately, due to Sombra, because I think all you do against a ball comp is you just solo counterhack the ball. I think it's too easy. I think even with a Tracer, you can do things like Matrix the Tracer and counterhack the ball, like when we're talking Lijiang Night Market. If we're all playing behind point there, and maybe like our Lucio's capping point, or maybe even just our D.Va's capping point, as soon as we call the ball, we just peel back, we Matrix our Sombra, we hack the ball, and he's dead.
Okay. And I'm assuming Tracer normally just wants to rotate with the ball.
Traditionally, unless the ball is playing like very non-committal, or you have good intel on the enemy Sombra and stuff like that, in which case Tracer can play more to follow up the ball, or to play like having an off angle in addition to the ball, just to add additional threats. But in general,
so otherwise you're just playing for sight lines, I'm assuming.
Yeah, exactly. And again, that's kind of why the ball Zen Tracer comp is so popular, because ball Tracer obviously work well together. When you throw in a Zen to that, you can play a lot slower and find a lot more value, which is where the Zen fits in.
Okay, would you ever want a Sombra or like a hit scan with the ball, ideally into a 6-man?
I would say it's map dependent. If there's really, really strong sightlines, you could do something with an Ashe. Like, I think a map like Volskaya Defense, actually, you could benefit a lot from like an Ashe Zen on a position like this, and being able to commit into Ashe's sightlines, because Ashe can see all the important spots of this map. If they rotate over here, Ashe has sightlines over here. If they rotate over here, Ashe has sightlines here.
Offensively, would you still want to run the Ashe? Or would you
I think Sombra does too much offensively, both in terms of scouting, setup, and punishing enemy engages. But not to say it's not possible. Obviously, it's up to your team. It's up to what you guys want to run, what you're confident in come game day, things like that. I think the Sombra does a lot for the composition, especially in quote-unquote positional disadvantage, though. I mean, we saw on our Lijiang retakes how many fights were so dependent on Sombra getting a hack or an EMP.
Yeah.
So, what exactly are your thoughts of Pharah Mercy against 6-man?
Pharah Mercy, I think, is decent, but it's obviously very reliant on Pharah finding value, and finding value faster than Moira can build Cole, and absolutely dominating the first fight. If you lose first fight, I think it's like always worth swapping the Pharah, unfortunately, even on like the really good Pharah maps.
Right.
And yeah, I don't think I would ever run it on offense. Yeah, I just wouldn't run it to take space. I don't think it's consistent. All right. Yeah, let's take a quick look at this defense here, and we'll see what we can get done. So again, like I don't have like a talking point here, but consider like what space we're holding and consider what we're doing with it. I think this is a great setup. I don't think this is a bad thing. I think this is a great Sombra angle to take. I think we could do the same thing even like above their spawn mega and stuff like that and be able to hit them out here. Again, all we're trying to do is put ourselves at advantage here. If getting a Sombra hack is that advantage, we play around the Sombra kill box. If isolating them at a choke is that advantage, we set Sombra up to abuse that choke. This is textbook stuff. And I'm assuming we're about to get a hack here. Monkey hacked. And again, this doesn't mean all in int, but it means we can use our resources slightly aggressively and hopefully find more value. Unfortunately, we don't get a kill here, but that doesn't mean the fight's over. We just reset, go back to neutral. Now, instead of being able to just walk through this choke because we put up this pressure, they're forced to use things like bubbles. And they're trying to commit early because they're trying to play off of the fact that we just took tempo, and they're trying to answer back with that. And hopefully this doesn't get value on their part, but if it does, this is going to be a warranted bubble, and then they're going to be able to use things like Monkey's Jump more aggressively if they find a kill right now, for example, which I doubt they will. Oh, that's unfortunate. In a situation like this, again, we don't need to back off immediately, but we need to already be starting to think defensively. So when that comes to how we're using Fade, how we're using Translocator, how we're using Amp, how we're using Matrix, we don't want to commit like a full Matrix to this situation now that our Reaper's dead. We want to be able to have Matrix to get ourselves out in case they push off of this kind of thing. And this is, again, just sort of how we're taking this neutral. And again, like this fight here was decent, but I don't think we got enough value to warrant, one, the peeking out here, and I don't think we reset fast enough once we realized we weren't getting enough value, which led to them being able to push us faster. It's small margins. And again, because we lingered a little bit more, we were forced to monkey jump out. Because we're forced to monkey jump out, they're able to monkey jump and D.Va boost in and chase our monkey, and this is probably going to net more kills for them because we don't have our main damage source to stave them off here. Okay, just kidding. We still have the Mega in their favor, so we're in a decent position. This is an example of the enemy team overextending their welcome, even though they got a kill on our Reaper, even though we're down a lot of our damage, them forcing this aggression. They didn't get value from their cooldowns. Sure, they hacked our Lucio. Sure, they got some damage in. But realistically, we're farming Cole a lot faster than them now. Now we're going to have a sooner advantage. We're farming Primal a lot faster than them now. We're going to have a reason to go back into them sooner with ultimates, even if we're down our Reaper. This is just to highlight the fact that this is razor thin margins we're working with, right? This is so instantaneously our favor, then their favor, then our favor, then their favor, just based on cooldown and positioning usage. There's no ultimates in play yet, although I'm starting to talk about ultimates building and stuff like that, but that's like the big one reason to all in when you have those ultimates first, so it's worth talking about. But just off positional advantage here, we've done a decent job stabilizing even after going down a man, and now we're finding a reason to go aggressive ourselves. And because of this position that they forced themselves into, now they've got new resources back. Obviously, they've got new jumps, they've got new bubbles, so it's not crazy, but we've got an early Cole, and we find a kill. I don't want to say it's simple, but you can sort of see how these trades ended up in our favor because we committed early, we didn't get enough, they got a Reaper. Then they committed after that, they didn't get enough, and then they stayed, and then we committed back with more than they could handle, and we closed out a kill. I don't know if this fight's going to go back in our favor, but you can see how it's starting to give us an advantage. Again, none of this has dictated who's going to win this team fight yet. This is why I compare this comp to GOATS so often. Like, so much bullshit can happen in the mid-fight that goes back and forth, especially with ultimates that build this quickly. But you can see how we put ourselves in advantage now, when we were at disadvantage previously. I hope that's getting through. I hope that's sticking with you guys, because these moments are so crucial. And this is why I put so much emphasis on the mid-fight ultimates and the mid-fight adaptations. Again, the mid-fight Reaper Blossom, we were only able to do that, or able to respond to that, because we had Matrix available, because we had positional advantage still, because we have a Sombra and a good hacking goal to now not only absorb this, but punish this Reaper for going for this play. They didn't force out these resources, they committed to this end game before they were allowed to, because they thought, hey, they're calling, they're going fast. But because we didn't just int into them with the Cole, we didn't use all our defensive cooldowns aggressively, we're able to flexibly adapt to the situation and hopefully kill this Reaper? Yeah. This is actually really fucking good of you guys. This is amazing. This is way better than what I saw in Lijiang.
Well, we have our main tank now.
Do you farm your EMP before they get in? Yeah.
I will say too, even in losing fights, you'll notice how often Sombra is able to farm a lot of EMP. This is going to be something that's worth tracking, ideally from your tank players, if you can, how much damage you're taking from the Sombra, but potentially also like in a matchup specific scenario. I don't know how common this is going to be for you guys, but if you're able to go into tournament against people you've scrimmed with, you can track how fast individual Sombras build EMP. This is actually, I think, one of the more interesting individual stats I've seen in the game, because Sombra playstyles can be so different in terms of what they're prioritizing in the mid-fight. I think just based on this screen, based on the fact that we won that fight, but we're still 10% behind here, means that we're a hack-heavy Sombra versus a damage-heavy Sombra. She's probably a tank-farming Sombra, that kind of thing. There's some Sombras who are more of assassins, who will try and hack and kill a Lucio in the backline. There's some Sombras who are straight peel and try to hack divas in the mid-fight so that it pops off for their Reaper. There's no right or wrong. Again, this isn't black and white. This isn't a right or wrong way to play this hero. But it is worth noting that it's not uncommon to see Sombras that farm much faster or sometimes much slower than you. And this isn't much faster, this is 10% we're talking about, but always something to be aware of. Never discount EMP.
I want to hit him outside of choke here. We're ready to walk.
I'm ready.
We're on 3, 2, 1, push. I'm on the morb.
Okay, we called outside of choke. In my head, I was thinking like out here, but obviously we're calling once they come through choke.
I was too.
Yeah,
my Sombra was just too far back, so I couldn't do it.
Yeah, number one thing, whoever the Sombra player is, it's your call. Same thing with Coalescence, same thing with Primal, same thing with D.Va Bomb. Even though this isn't like a mid-fight ultimate that we've been talking a lot about, this is a very important coordinated moment that we need to capitalize on, right? If we don't get a kill right now, or if, at the very least, if we don't force them to like beat an EMP in response, which in a perfect world they can't because they're EMP'd, then we're not getting enough value from this moment. And we'll see how it plays out. I haven't actually seen this yet. They counter EMP, we've got beat. Yeah, we trade up. We're fine. Did we cancel their beat as he was casting it? That'd be huge.
Yeah.
That's sick. Nice. Yeah, I mean, it's obvious, right, that we're coming out ahead in this trade. It's obvious that we're trading up in value because we're canceling ults, we're getting bigger beats off, we're getting bigger kills during the fight and stuff like that. These are the obvious moments. And I really want to highlight that a lot of this is off the fact that we're on defense. They had to come through here, so we had, even though our Sombra was all the way back here, we still had a decent EMP opportunity. Imagine how strong this could have been if we were better set up for it, if we were all on the same page.
Yeah, I see him.
Again, another mid-fight bomb. I think in general, we're discounting how strong bomb can be in these moments. Again, it's not a kill tool. It's not expecting to get 6 kills, maybe with an EMP bomb, but even that's starting to fall out of favor because of how obvious just an EMP bomb can be these days. But this level of disruption is really strong for our team comp. All that it takes in this kind of moment right here is a call to push on a target, and we just kill this Winston. Or we just kill this Reaper. But during that play, not enough of us were doing something. We were depending on the bomb to find value, and we're almost waiting to follow it. Instead of, again, like, the ideal communication structure I would like to hear in a moment like this is looking for bomb, and then as you're bombing like a specific location with a target in mind. So just to get into a bit of D.Va micro stuff, I don't want to linger on this too much. Whenever you're looking for a bomb location, obviously you have good control over your bombs. You know where you're bombing, why you're bombing there. When you are bombing here, think of the specific sight lines you're denying, and think of the people that you're catching off by this bomb. So obviously, when you are bombing, I hope you have a good idea of where everyone on the enemy team is, and then you should know how limited they are because of the bomb. It's the same thing as like when a Mei is looking for Blizzard. Obviously, it's a lot easier when you're playing against a Brawl comp and you're just blizzarding into 6 people who can't move very fast. But when we're D.Va bombing here, it's a space denial tool. It's not a team fight killer. It's not a fight ender is what I was trying to say. It's not a team killer. But what it does do is overexpose people and force them to split up. And this is a very, very easy moment to capitalize on, even without D.Va Mech, even without Matrix. At the very least, you need to call a target and location during this play. Again, I think this Winston is very overexposed, and all it takes is like Reaper walking at this guy. And then that forces him to bubble instead of just LOS the bomb. This forces him to jump defensively after the bomb. So he's not just reacting to the bomb, he's reacting to the Reaper, and then not only is the bomb finding value, the Reaper's finding value, and we're layering these resources one after another, and it's forcing our advantage state further. The bomb means we're at advantage because they're afraid of the bomb. The Reaper damage means we're further at advantage because we forced Winston's cooldowns. From there, maybe we find a reason to all in the Winston. From there, maybe we find a reason to force these people out, or find a more aggressive hack, or just get Sombra in position, or start farming EMP faster, like even small advantages like that. Even if it's not a team fight kill, even if it's not just an all-in from this moment, there's so much more we could be gaining from it. And again...
So I was talking about earlier, by the way, with like, we just rely on ults finding value too much.
Yeah, exactly. We're relying on them finding value, but no one's finding value. That's the problem. The ult itself isn't the value. The value from ultimates like this, again, like when we Cole, are we expecting everyone to just die from Cole? Of course not. We're expecting
Moira.
or like a Far Mercy, maybe, if you're lucky. But yeah, the value that comes from Cole comes from how much stronger it makes our all-in. So how much stronger does it make our all-in here? It's not because the bomb itself is healing and damaging people we're on. It's because it's splitting and overexposing targets that are now so much easier to all-in. So it's all about, again, advantage states. I can't stress that enough. Advantage states caused from ultimates, caused from positioning, caused from trading up resources, whatever you want to find. All of these are reasons to get more coordinated, get faster in these team fights, and really finish them off strong by finding kills. Otherwise, if we trade too much back and forth, they're going to find a reason to capitalize on us. All right, a bit slow. Okay, so we called back up towards Mega. I'm not sure who was calling that exactly, but this was, again, a disadvantage state because we didn't get enough value from the bomb. They felt confident to throw in the Coalescence. Now they're throwing in a bomb as well. And look how split we are. I wish I could turn on the overlay because it would show like 6 people in 6 different locations looking in 6 different directions. This is obviously a lack of coordination. And this is because, from what I can tell for the most part, because we were making individual decisions around the D.Va bomb, and those individual decisions expended individual resources, namely positioning, and because we weren't able to reconvene and get everyone together post-bomb, we're now panicking, dealing with the Moira Cole and the D.Va bomb. We try to find individual outplays to get ourselves back into the fight, but at the end of the day, We lost our Lucio for no reason.
3, 2, 1.
Break bubble. I have EMP soon. I got killed today. They're really low. They're really low. You guys can choose.
I think this was a little bit fast. I think we used most of our matrix during the prior engage, so going this aggressively I think might be a bit too quick.
Break bubble. I have EMP soon. I got killed today.
But it was close.
They're really low. They're really low. You guys can choose.
I mean, the cold timing is really good. Again, I'd like to hear more comms about it, but I'm not going to harp on that anymore.
Look for more or monkey as your target.
You're down 2, maybe.
Lucio hacks. You might have to EMP. You're still down.
EMP.
All of
Nice.
them.
Monkey one.
Again, we're kind of split on target focus here. If we're planning this EMP, why are we still moving backwards post EMP?
All of them.
Monkey one.
And then we're calling split targets between both D.Va and Monkey. I haven't addressed this much because I think there were bigger concerns, but this is a really good highlight of our lack of target focus in these moments. Where, again, the EMP isn't what wins this fight. It's the follow-up post-EMP. The EMP guarantees that they can't use any resources defensively beyond Moira healing, right? Which, I mean, Moira healing's pretty fucking good, but it's not everything. It's not everything they have. 90% of what they would like to use in this situation, they just straight up cannot. So all we have to do is guarantee value from that EMP, and then we're golden for the rest of this fight. It means we have more time to build up our Primal for our Winston to get back to point, to build up our D.Va Bomb to stabilize again, to buy more time, and so on and so forth. But because we're too slow to capitalize on the situation, too slow and too disconnected in terms of target focus, we don't get anything. And now this is a really good opportunity for them to just very easily push back into us. Up until this moment, we were doing a decent job. Up until that D.Va Bomb play, we were doing a really good job on defense here. But then we got a little bit too relaxed with our focus, and we got a little bit too disconnected in terms of our priorities, and we weren't able to really actualize our win condition. Support so much. And again, thanks for the gig. Happy to come in. Always love reviewing high-level teams like you guys, and this has been a lot of fun. If not a little bit stressful, I hope I haven't deterred you guys too much from running this comp. I know it probably feels like we're dog shit running this comp, but I promise you there's a lot of good that we're seeing here. There's just a lot to build on from that. If we are going to be running this comp, we need to be extremely confident running it, and we need to be extremely adaptable. And this is going to do a lot of things for us as a team. Number one, it's going to make us win the mirror consistently, hopefully, of course. It's going to make us more confident in the non-mirror, and it's going to introduce a lot of team concepts that are going to snowball into bettering other compositions. I think most notably, a lot of the concepts in this composition are valid for the Ball Zen Tracer composition. Obviously, it looks extremely different, but in terms of our level of communication and how we're willing to commit to team fights, it's going to level up our coordination as a team. So, priorities moving forward. I'll try to draw these on the screen here if you guys are still in the review. So, number one. Oh man, this is not like a ranked tier list. This is just as I'm remembering them as they come up. So don't think of these as like this is the number one thing you need to work on. But number one thing, or starting with number one, mid-fight adaptations. And excuse my poor mouse handwriting. So what this means in a nutshell is being more willing to communicate and commit to each other in the mid-fight. This starts with ultimates. From there, we go to punish enemy cooldowns, enemy important resources, whether that's positioning or hard cooldowns like monkey jump and things like this. These are the obvious steps. There's going to be 10 new layers beyond this point that are a lot less obvious that we're going to need to work on in the future. But for now, we got to get our base level stuff down. We got to get the ultimate coordination down, and we got to get the enemy punishes down. From there, our general communication. Talking more. All six of us are looking for excuses to be better than the enemy team. We look for these mid-fight adaptations, of course, but beyond that, we're planning our ultimates. We're planning how we're starting fights. We're talking about our rollouts. We're talking about how willing we are to commit. We're playing off of each other. We're coordinating target calls. God, I've been saying this to teams for 10 years now, but it's always true. We always got to work on our target calls because it can always be better because there's always going to be a situation where we're not on the same page where we could have been. And I think, again, the best example from this Volskaya most recently, just since it's fresh, is just that D.Va Bomb. We didn't know what we were using the bomb for. We didn't have a target call during the bomb. We weren't able to coordinate anything together, so individually we got punished. 3. Macro focus. This is extremely vague, so I'll elaborate a little bit. But macro focus here means being willing to adapt the win condition to what better suits the team in the moment. I don't care if you find the best Reaper TP Blossom play in the game. It's going to get matrixed. It's going to get booped away. And I know you're not looking for these. I'm just using it as an exaggerated example. But it's not going to find value without team fight coordination. So again, looking back at Lijiang Night Market, that situation where we hacked the ball and kind of didn't do anything is exactly what I'm talking about. Being ready to focus on the macro rather than get stuck in your own head about what you want to do as an individual. And to an extent, that is focus on macro. That is you thinking about the team fight, but you're focused too heavily on what you're bringing to the team fight instead of being adaptable to what your team is doing for you. And if you're not willing to, or not willing, I shouldn't say not willing, if you're not able to quickly adapt to those moments, we need better listening skills and we need, well, better communication, like we talked about, but we need faster adaptability and we need to play more on the fly and less on a script. These are too many situations just we're letting pass by us right now. Even though, from what I saw, like, we're winning most of our team fights. That's not enough anymore. We need to win every single team fight if we can. Sure, there's going to be plenty of stuff that catches us off guard, and that might be an unrealistic expectation to set for ourselves, but we need to look at these winning fights and look at what we could have done better. Otherwise, we're never going to tackle the top level teams. We're never going to reach top level OD. We're never going to reach contenders, whatever it is that we're trying to reach as individuals or as a team. Unless we're able to really play high level macro Overwatch, we're not going to be able to do even the fundamental things that are expected of these teams at this level. So keep that in mind. This should be number one, to be honest, put that one up there. But be ready and willing to commit to what your team comp does best. And this team comp does a lot of things pretty well, but it doesn't do everything. So do what's best for the moment. If that's playing slow and sustaining, do that. If that's finding an all-in on the enemy Zenyatta, do that. If that's looking to counter-hack and then re-engage, do that. If it's looking to trade ultimates, do that. But don't just play by what you want to do. Listen to your teammates. Focus on adaptation. Focus on living in the moment, carpe diem, whatever it is, and be ready to adapt to the situations that arise rather than what you have visualizing in your head. Visualization is extremely important, but 90% of the time, we're never going to actualize. And next thing, just general EMPs. I know we had like our non-starter on Sombra and stuff like that, so it's kind of awkward, but EMP is both sort of like aggressive and counter EMPs. So the one thing I saw that we did really well was have ultimate trades available. We were beating every EMP that I saw. Anytime they cold, we were able to adapt to that, maybe counter cold ourselves. Anytime we were going aggressive with our ultimates, we weren't, I shouldn't say every time, but a decent amount of the time when we were going aggressive with our ultimates, we were still somewhat readily available to counter their counter ultimates, in a sense. So their counter EMPs and stuff like that. That's really, really good, but it's not perfect, and we strive for perfection here. Even if we'll never reach it, we're going to strive for perfection. So when we're going aggressive with EMPs, better communication, smarter setups, like we talked about, one of those three situations, whether that's a hammer and anvil, whether that's abusing positioning, again, that's sort of like the default one, or whether that's an extremely overwhelming force that catches them off guard. The key moment in that third one, the one that we were trying to do somewhat consistently, is that our timing was off, and it was pretty telegraphed, to be honest. The translocator thing, again, just never do that again and we'll be good. But just general follow-up timing needs to be so much faster. But yeah,
okay.
I think that's a good place to wrap up.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah, again, thank you guys.